Okay. Before we start, let me introduce our panelists. Those who will join us for our conversation for today's webinar. I will start with our friends from DLA Piper. We have Andrew Valentine. Andrew is a partner at the law firm DLA Piper, a U.S. law firm, where he practices as an intellectual property litigator. He's a trial lawyer. He's also a member of DLA Piper's international pro bono arm, New Perimeter. So as part of New Perimeter, Andrew has participated in a number of pro bono projects globally in different countries, including in Nepal, Myanmar, Namibia, and Rwanda. And Andrew is a regular at one of the core group members of the Asia Pro Bono Consortium. And then we have Sarah Andrews. Sarah Andrews is Senior International Pro Bono Counsel and Assistant Director for New Perimeter. New Perimeter is DLA Piper's nonprofit affiliate that provides long-term pro bono legal assistance in underserved regions around the world to support access to justice, social and economic development, and sound legal institutions. As Assistant Director of New Perimeter, Sarah helps lead the strategic direction of the program and develops and works on New Perimeter projects and manages global teams of DLA Pipers. And then we have Annette Mbogo. She's the Executive Director of Kituo Cha Sharia, based in Kenya. Annette provides legal intervention on behalf of clients and leads the team at Kituo Cha Sharia. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. She joined Kituo Cha Sharia in October 2009 as a legal officer, and she has previously served as the coordinator at Kituo's regional office in Mombasa. She's a doctor of philosophy in law. And last but not the least, we have Yevgen Poltenko. Yevgen is based in Ukraine. He is the executive director of Legal Development Network. Legal Development Network is one of the major non-governmental legal aid providers in Ukraine, working with local communities in 15 of 25 Ukrainian regions. So LDN is a network of organizations uniting 23 local member organizations that provide legal aid to individuals as well as legal support to communities in shaping their policies since 2009. So if you can see your at the bottom of the screen, if you can give them virtual applause or any reactions that you may have. Okay. Before we start our conversation, we'll be asking a couple of questions. I will call on Andrew. I'll turn over to the floor to Andrew to give us our poll questions. Andrew?
Thank you, Marlon, and welcome from around the world. It's great to be part of this webinar today. We'd like to start with a very short poll, just asking a couple of questions of the participants. So if you can, pay attention to your screen, we're going to have a poll that comes up, and here it is in just a moment. So we're asking two questions just so we can get a good idea of who we have in our audience. And also we're interested in knowing, how the last year has been for you in terms of transitioning online. So the first poll question simply asks what type of organization you are from, whether it's legal aid, a law firm, academic, civil society organization, or government. Or if that doesn't apply, you can check other, which is the last bubble. And then the second question asks, how has transitioning to working online been for you? And obviously we're really interested in the last year during the pandemic when people have been sheltering and had to deal with clients and colleagues remotely. So we've asked you how that has been going for you in the last year. Easy, moderately challenging, challenging, difficult, or extremely difficult. So if we could take maybe, since there's only 2 questions, maybe 1 minute to have you check the boxes and submit your poll, we would appreciate it. All right, there we go. We can post the poll. So great. So this is helpful information. As people can see on the screen, we have about half of our audience, 45%, a little less than half, from civil society organizations. So that's wonderful. But we have participants from all of the areas that we had mentioned: legal aid, law firm, small number of academics, which is wonderful as well. Welcome, and some people from the government as well. So that's a nice broad spectrum of participants. On the second, it looks like about 50%, almost exactly 51% of participants have found that transitioning to working online moderately challenging. I would say that if I answered that, I probably would have said challenging, because while I think there are some wonderful tools and ways to work remotely and to work online, it still has been, for me, I think, more challenging, because I interact a lot with clients and colleagues, and it's been difficult to do that remotely. I think we've done the best we can, and actually, I think if I look back a year, I think we've done, from what I've observed, people have done a terrific job providing legal services online and remotely, but it's been a challenge. Some people have put difficult and extremely difficult. That's absolutely understandable, because it is a difficult situation to be immediately thrust into a situation where you cannot do your business and work with your clients, or do your work in a way that you were planning to do. And really what a lot of today will be about, or the next hour will be about, some of the challenges, some of the pitfalls, and some of the best ways to address those challenges and pitfalls, to be able to have the most successful online business you can, in terms of working online and transitioning to that. Because even after the pandemic, I think these tools that we have learned in the last year will be very important in terms of how we and you will likely want to provide legal services. So thank you for doing those 2 poll questions. Again, that's very helpful. Marlon, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Very interesting results, especially the moderately challenging. More than half said moderately challenging. I wonder if we would have the same results if we had asked that question 5 months, 6 months ago. And do you know that next week we'll be marking the official anniversary? I know it's not something we celebrate, but we will mark the official anniversary of the pandemic next week. WHO declared COVID-19 a pandemic on March 11 last year. So 1 year, almost a year now. So when we talk about transitioning to working online, we have survived this. We have been doing this for 1 year now. And as legal empowerment practitioners, legal service providers, we work closely with communities, with the clients, with the partners. But because of the pandemic, because of the safety protocols, the restrictions, travel restrictions, restrictions on gathering, we were compelled to reinvent the way we operate, and we are pleased to highlight a few of these experiences and how we have adapted, how we have tried new ways of continuing our work. We recently released a new resource that explores accessible online platforms for remote work. And the guide features good practices for the usage of these platforms for remote work. I will now call on Sarah to introduce the guide and explain how it can be helpful, how it can be used by legal empowerment groups and other organizations providing legal services remotely. So, Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Marlon. And I know I agree. It's interesting and I think heartening that the responses, leaned more towards it being moderately difficult. And I agree that perhaps things have gotten better, which is a great development. Because of all the challenges that we have all faced this past year in terms of figuring out what technologies are available and then figuring how to best use them. As Marlon mentioned, we produced earlier this year this guide, which is also available in the link in the invitation that you all received. And it's available on the websites of all of the project partners. But it was a collaboration between the Legal Empowerment Network, the Open Society Justice Initiative, and DLA Piper's New Perimeter program. As Marlon mentioned, we're a law firm, we're a global law firm in over 40 countries. And we do a lot of pro bono and have a separate nonprofit affiliate dedicated to global pro bono. So the goal here was really to try to pull together a lot of information to hopefully make weeding through the mess of this past year easier for legal services providers, to help you understand the broad range of technologies that are available, and then really recommendations for the best ways to use the technology. So it includes sections. The first section is really kind of a breakdown of a variety of different technology platforms that you can use, both for online meetings, which we're doing so much of these days, and then SMS and instant messaging apps. And we examine, for each technology, we look at the different features, including accessibility and privacy, as well as the cost. And we also looked at where possible, where there are discounts for nonprofits. The second section looks at the use of hotlines, including best practices for hotline operation and technological tools for managing hotlines. We also look at online workshops and legal clinics, including best practices for Know Your Rights webinars and online clinics. There's a section which is very important, which I know people have had a lot of challenges with, the issue of confidentiality and proper handling of documents. And Andrew will be addressing that later in this webinar. Then we look at available technologies for managing cases, including cloud-based case management platforms and document management and transfer platforms. And then finally, we look at a very brief section looking at remote access to courts and government agencies, which includes some basic recommendations. We didn't go into too much depth in that section just because of the very highly localized responses in different jurisdictions. And then finally, last but not least, we look at 5 different case studies of organizations, two of which we'll profile today, that are legal services providers around the world that are using technology to reach clients. So I encourage all of you to download the resource and use it. We hope it is helpful to you. And we also wanted to let you know that right now it's available in English, and we have a Spanish translation that will be coming out very soon. And we will keep everybody who's involved in this webinar, we'll keep you posted on when that will be released.
Thank you, Sarah. And let's wait for the Spanish version. to be released soon. So wait for further announcements. As Sarah mentioned in the guide, we featured a few case studies. These are good practice examples of online remote programs. How legal empowerment organizations continue the work, but remotely. We are fortunate that we have Annette and Yevgen today, because the respective programs of Kituo Chaseria and LDN, the Legal Development Network, are among the featured cases in the guide. And we will hear from Annette and Yevgen some details about their program. So I'll call on Annette and Yevgen. I have a few questions for you. First, just a quick introduction about the two programs. It's good that we are looking at Kituo Chaseria's and LDN's programs, because one, Kituo Chaseria's program is SMS based, so texting. So it's providing advice, legal services through texting. On the other hand, LDN's program is a live chat program, which is linked to the website of LDN. So it would be good to hear the how they operate their programs, the challenges they experience. So let's start with Annette. And Annette, can you please describe to us briefly your program? It's called mHacky. Can you also explain the name? Why mHacky?
Thank you very much, Marlon, for this opportunity. And I feel very privileged to have been part of, our case studies having been profiled in this very informative guide. And just a brief mHacky. Haki is Swahili for justice, and M really stands for mobile, because as Marlon has explained, the platform is SMS based, and the name was coined from the fact that it's a mobile justice platform, and that's where the name comes from. And Haki Mkononi, which is the slogan, just means justice in your hand. That really just speaks to the fact that with your mobile phone to us.
Okay.
Yes, and maybe just yeah.
Thank you, Annette. We'll go to the some of the details about the mHacky program, but let's go to Yevgen first and ask Yevgen to please give us a brief description of your program. Do you have a name? Is there a name for the program, Yevgen?
Hi to everyone. Thank you, Marlon, for inviting me to have. Thank you for having me in this very interesting webinar. You almost said everything about the idea of our live chat platform. We have no specific name for this platform, just live chat. We call it live chat. So the idea is very simple. It's providing legal assistance through chat box on our website. So I'm happy to share details more about this.
Can you please explain to us briefly how the program is operated? How do you receive questions, requests, and how do you process these requests? Who responds to those requests?
Users may submit their questions on the Legal Development Network's website, ldn.org.ua, as I mentioned, through a dedicated chat box. And a pool of our lawyers, now it's 30 lawyers from our 15-member organizations, respond to the questions and engage in live conversations with the user. The schedule is from Monday to Friday during normal business hours. And LDN member organizations are scheduled on specific days of the week to provide support for the live chat. and it's typically involves one lawyer answering around up to 20 questions per day. And if the case requires follow-up, the lawyer will send the individual information for a personal consultation with the Legal Development Network Legal Office. And in case if the office is unable to take the matter on, it will refer it to one of our member organizations or our partner organization or partner institutions, for instance, Office of Governmental Legal Aid System. However, I have to mention that approximately 25% of questions are resolved in the live chat, and only 5% require outside referrals. The live chat service is publicized on social media and through traffic on our website. I have to mention that more than, by this month, more than 100,000 visitors visit the LDN website every month. And also many of our member organizations promote the live chat feature on their websites and their pages on social media.
Thank you, Yevgen. Very interesting. The number of the number of cases or questions that one person, one lawyer, responds to in a given day. I'll ask Annette. How about your program? It's slightly different. No, it's not live chat, but through SMS, through texting. Can you please explain how this works?
Yes, so this mHaki platform was launched in 2016 after a lot of work was done around inventing the platform in 2015. And how the system operates is that SMS messages are sent from a mobile phone and they go directly to the mHaki website. From the mHaki website, then our lawyers are able to access the questions and respond to the questions through the website. And these responses are then redirected to via SMS to the user of the platform. And we have a particular mobile number that has been reserved for this. That is a Kenyan number. And the users only pay the normal SMS charges. So this is less than $1 for you to access these services. And then through the support of our partners, specifically the Netherlands Embassy, we're able to maintain the platform as well as pay for the costs for hosting this platform. So on the other side, we are trying to work very closely with our volunteer advocates and community paralegals because sometimes after community activities. And so the idea is then to expand, can access the website and respond to questions. And this way, the backlog is not really on the side just of our in-house lawyers, but also we have paralegals and volunteer advocates who work together with us who can help us to respond to the questions. And we have a timeline for response that's 48 hours. And our lawyers are open to respond to questions between 8 to 5 from Monday to Fridays. We are also have received feedback that the 48-hour period is a bit long. And so with hopefully with more in-house lawyers, we can shorten it to maybe 1 day instead of 48 hours. But this is work that is still in progress.
Very urgent concerns. 48 hours is not prompt enough.
Yes.
So we need answers immediately. Annette, you mentioned that the program was conceptualized in 2015. So the program started even before the the pandemic. So you were ahead of many of us
Yeah.
in starting this online program.
Yes.
How did you start? What led you to? There was a pandemic at that time. We were not covered by the restriction. So what led you to? And I will ask the same question to you again. But Annette first. How did you conceptualize the program? How did you start?
Definitely, it's not COVID-19 that led us to start the program, but I think it was the need, the fact that we found that our clients had to travel very long distances to come to our offices for legal services, some having to spend even up to $50 just to come to our office to access our services. And so the idea was then to reduce the cost for access of services, legal services to our clients, and then also just to simplify access to legal services, because you know that the platform uses SMS, and a lot of our clients have indigent clients, and so they're not able to afford to buy a smartphone. So the SMS makes it easy and more accessible for our clients to be able to just use an ordinary mobile phone for them to access these services. So mainly what really informed the idea of the platform was the fact that we could reach more people and our clients and our beneficiaries would not have to travel so far for them to access these services. And at the same time, we found that the use of technology can actually be more efficient as opposed to having people coming physically to the office. So a lot of these factors really contributed towards developing this platform. And during that time, around 2015, our justice sector, especially the judiciary, was also just thinking around embracing technology. And so we thought that starting it at that time was very crucial, and so that we are at pace with other justice actors at that time. And so we came to had partnerships with innovators who have been creating solutions, technological solutions for a while. And with their support, one of them was HEAL, the other one is Ushahidi, who were able to develop this platform that right now has been running for around 6 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So 2015, 5 years before the pandemic. Yevgen, you started, when did you start? When did you start the program?
We started a little bit later in 2017, but also long before the pandemic.
Yeah,
so
3 years before the pandemic.
And I have to say that our motivation was very similar to our Kenyan colleagues. As we understand, access to justice is impossible without access to legal aid. But we understand that our resources of civil society organization will never be enough to reach all those who need this kind of help, aid. So we decided to take the advantage of technological opportunities and create a kind of virtual legal office. And using funds from our donor organization, International Renaissance Foundation, it's a part of Ukrainian representative of Open Society Foundations. We contracted with an IT company to develop this software and integrate it into our website, as I mentioned, in 2017. Our ongoing, anyway, this is costly tool. Ongoing costs of legal development network include paying IT specialists who coordinate the schedule of lawyers and provide technical support to the lawyers during their shifts. and every year we have to fundraise $20,000 to support this activity to secure this service, providing legal assistance to Ukrainians.
So 2015 for Kitua Chasheria, for MHAKI, and then 2017 for LDN. Let's now go to 2020. So pandemic. Can you describe how the pandemic has affected the program, or should I say, how did the program help you during the pandemic? So let's start with Yevgen, and then let's ask Annette about that.
Marlon, it may sound strange, but the pandemic has become a so-called start time for our live chat platform. And I think the fact that our case is profiled in the guide presented by Sarah, and I hope we will manage to proceed with Ukrainian version of this guide. I have to mention that the volume of legal consultations provided in 2020 through this live chat increased 5 times compared to the previous year, 2019. And in the first months of quarantine restrictions, this was almost the only opportunity for our lawyers to help people, to provide consultations. That is, unlike our colleagues from governmental and non-governmental organizations in Ukraine, who had some period of time to adapt to new pandemic reality. And thanks to this online platform, our organizations, Legal Development Network member organizations, never stopped providing consultations since pandemic blasted.
Annette?
Yeah, on our side, the platform really helped us during the pandemic because we had government restrictions, as many other countries must have had, where we had partial lockdowns and restrictions in movement. And we ourselves had to, for some time, downscale our operations and work from home. And so during that time, then the program was extremely useful because we were able to redirect a number of our physical clients to the platform. And the platform also received a lot of questions and queries during the time of the partial lockdowns. And we were able to just continue with access to justice work using the platform. And it's also other civil society organizations came up with similar programs during that time. So at least we did not have a cessation of programs during the COVID period. And we were able to still provide support to our beneficiaries and at the same time ensure that our staff remain safe in light of the safety measures that were provided by the government.
As I mentioned earlier, you were ahead of many of us, both programs. So, but now let's try to understand the difficulties. I'm sure you've had some challenges at starting the program before the pandemic, and then also during the pandemic. Can you share some of those challenges and how you addressed, how you overcame those challenges? Who wants to go first, Annette or Yevgen? Yevgen first.
Well,
okay.
Maybe I can start.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, okay.
Annette, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Yevgen. So first was sustainability of the program. I think that's one of the major challenges I would say that we have had in terms of how do you sustain this particular platform, even outside, development partner support. There are quite a number of costs that are involved in not just developing the innovation, but also maintaining and supporting the innovation. And so we have been lucky up to this point that we had support from the Netherlands embassy, but then always at the back of our minds, one of our concerns is what would happen in terms of sustaining this program, because it has proven to be extremely useful. And to think of is how to integrate the platform in all programs of Kituo. And I think integrating of the platform is a good way in which we can really improve its sustainability. And
Okay, I think we're having some connectivity problems from Annette's end. Okay, can we go to you, Yevgen?
Sorry. Hello.
Okay. Yes. Can you just please repeat the last your last statement, Annette? We lost you for a few seconds. You were saying you need to integrate it in all your programs.
Sorry, I think Yes, I think that is a major challenge, and that's what we are working towards doing.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Yevgen, challenges and how did you address, or how do you address those challenges?
As I heard from Annette, the challenges are very similar to us. First of all, the primary and most significant challenge is to secure funding for this service. As I mentioned, it's very costly for us. How we address we just do our fundraising efforts and try to secure this service ongoing. The second very important challenge is to attract qualified volunteer lawyers, and we address this challenge by motivating our member organizations with the importance of this pro bono work and to trying to provide trainings and other support for qualifying our lawyers. And this is the issue of the quality, as mentioned, Annette, of these consultations. And we address this challenge with systematic monitoring of the answers. It's not very difficult for us because live chat we have all scripts of these answers, and sometimes we make some kind of peer review of this and work with lawyers who need more training or need more information of some cases or some issues which is maybe new or not usual for them. And the third challenge I would like to mention, it's the challenge how to teach lawyers to use these technical capabilities of the platform properly.
We have some very interesting questions coming from our attendees. So I'd like to throw in some of those questions. I will try to combine some questions so that we can address as many questions as possible. Some of the questions are asking about the type of issues that you are focusing on in the legal service programs. They were asking, one attendee is asking, is it is there any possibility for these types of programs to support gender-based violence victims in any way? So another attendee was asking, LDN specifically, what are your members focusing on? Social rights and specifically health, human rights? And another related question is, aside from asking the kind of legal issues, they were asking if you are tracking, if you have if you're collecting data, information, metrics on the legal problems in particular. So let's cover those related questions. Let's start with Yevgen this time.
About the focus of our work of Legal Development Network, we focus mostly on civil cases, civil and administrative cases. The types of cases we work with, they also include gender-based violence, but mostly it's cases, family issues, land issues, and with the beginning of pandemic, the issues regarding labor rights are also very we work. It's maybe the sort for the importance or the quantity of consultations we deal with. So labor rights, labor issues, and what the third part of the question, Marlon? Can you remind me?
Whether you are tracking the types of issues, whether you are collecting data and collating information about the issues.
Yes, we have our own custom case management system, and the live chat is integrated to the system. So we collect all the data regarding not all, but we sometimes cannot track, for instance, some social demographic categories of our clients, but the type of issue, the contents of the case, and the answer of our lawyer, we can track this information.
How about you, Annette? What types of issues, and specifically, if you can answer the question about the gender-based violence cases, can this platform address those issues?
Yeah, just like the Legal Development Network, we address a category of issues, so for instance, land succession matters, labor, housing and eviction issues, forced migration and refugee matters, and gender-based violence issues also have been brought through the platform, and also general legal inquiries are also received. So the platform allows us to address all categories of legal issues, and we do have a way in which our IT team is able to then look at the data that has come in through the cases and questions that have been received, and then compile and break down the nature of cases, as well as the trends that are coming out from the cases that have been submitted through the platform. And we noted that during the when the COVID-19 was at the peak, at least in Kenya, during the lockdown period, there was an increase in gender-based violence reports. So we do look at the trends, and these trends then inform our future programming. And what we did, in fact, when we noted that, is that we came up with what we call vlogs. These are just short videos that train communities on how to respond to gender-based violence. And also trained our paralegals more on how to respond to cases of gender-based violence. Yes.
Thank you for that. We have many questions coming in from our attendees. But before we continue, I saw Manolo Morales from Ecolex is here, and Ecolex program Línea Verde is also one of the programs that we featured in the guide. Is Manolo here? Can we ask Manolo to share briefly what Línea Verde is, the program Línea Verde of Ecolex?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
can you hear me?
There's Manolo. Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Go ahead,
thank you very
Manolo.
much. Okay, thank you, Marlon, for the invitation to participate in this very important meeting. Let me to silence the Spanish translation in my computer, if not. Okay, so Línea Verde or Green Line, it's a legal service by phone. This is a phone line to connect with the people in the country, and this service we provide for the community in Ecuador more or less from 15 years ago. Attend mainly cases related to the environmental justice and land tenure conflict issues. These services receive the call for the people. It's important because until today, when the people, the urban people has access to internet, in the rural areas not. So the connection by phone is very important for them. And we receive the two kinds of requirements from the people. One is the legal consultation, and secondly is complaint itself. In the first one, we provide information about what is the ways, the legal ways to solve the problems, or what is the close authority to present the case and solve by themselves, etc. And the second case, for the gravity of the situation, we decide among them the possibility to present a complaint in front of the authority, and we follow the process, the legal process in favor of the community, of the people. The achievements until today, it's 100 cases that we receive. I very agree with the colleague from Ukraine, because the mainly cases not finish as legal case in the court or in the public institution. Regularly, the cases is more consultation. 20 or 30% finish as a complaint in front of the court, and we follow the case advisory into the community. In any case, we represent the case by colleagues, by us. We represent legally to the community. Okay, we act as lawyer for the community in the complaint. About the sustainability, I would like to mention that we have several donors for supporting our legal services, but after many years, now the service really, it's no expensive for us, because the lawyers that we attend, the Green Line, it's we are lawyers that works in another project, and we share part our time for this program. And the cost about the phone services is not really expensive. So this is and we maintain the program with our own funds, where our overhead, institutional overhead, we maintain the service. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gracias, Manolo. Línea Verde, Green Line. And we have some questions about sensitive cases involving security. One question said government did not welcome the program because they were covering some security issues. We will go to that, and we will continue our conversation. Annette and Yevgen, we're not yet done with our conversation. We have many more. Many more questions from our attendees, but we will continue later. But we want to. I will call on Andrew Valentine to give us some tips on how we can address those issues. One question was about sending documents. One question was asking whether Annette and Yevgen's programs would allow the sending of documents. So we will go to that, and I will now call on Andrew to share some ideas on how we can best address confidentiality, privacy, security issues. So I'll call on Andrew.
Great, thank you. So Annette and Yevgen, thank you for talking about your organizations, and Manolo as well to talk about Línea Verde. I mean, those are really terrific examples of how you're able to operate remotely. And Marlon, thanks for moderating that panel. I mean, the thing I really hear from that discussion and have learned from working on this guide is how effective and efficient providing legal services can be when you do it in a remote environment. It doesn't always make sense, and it's not always practical to meet with clients and to give legal advice in a face-to-face environment. I mean, that's often the best way to do it. And it's something we've all done in our careers, but it's not always feasible to be able to do. So it's great to hear these examples of successful examples of doing that service remotely. And I think the other thing that I just think is wonderful about these examples is that they all predate the pandemic. I mean, this is something that the legal community, I think, and legal service providers have been moving toward for many years. And our panelists are really the pioneers in that area, but that we're all going to be doing much, much more of this even as we get on the other side of the pandemic. So one particular area that's really challenging, I think, when we're providing legal services remotely and to think about, and I just want to address quickly because it'd be great to get back to some more questions and answers, is it's the issues of attorney-client privilege and confidentiality. So just to kind of remind ourselves of the basics, I mean, those are really the core of the attorney-client relationship. And I think we all need to remember as we provide services remotely, that, you know, how important it is to maintain attorney-client privilege and to maintain our clients' privileged and confidential information. Because when we start working in remote environments, whether it's SMS, texting, emails, you know, working in those types of remote communication, it becomes a little less formal. It's more informal, but the relationship does not change just because we're communicating with our clients on our phones or in a setting like this on maybe, you know, a Zoom type of call. So it's really important to make sure we maintain the attorney-client privilege and that privilege is not waived. And of course, the privilege is the communication between the attorney and the client. And that could be confidential information or non-confidential information. It's the communication that is important to protect, and it's a communication that's made in confidence and for the purpose of providing legal assistance. And where that can get tricky when we're working remotely is trying to understand the environments in which we're working. For example, if we start engaging with the client who's in a cafe or is at home, or is in some environment where there are other people around, you need to think about who's overhearing the conversation, and is your client saying things that other people could overhear. And it's important that you think about, when you're engaging a client remotely, understanding where you are physically and where your client is physically, to make sure that you maintain that privilege. That is the second point on this slide, that it's something made in confidence, and that you're not inadvertently or by mistake disclosing something to the public. For example, if a client's in a cafe and speaking loudly about their legal issue, that would be, other people could hear. The reason that is important is if a communication is disclosed to a public or third party, it could be deemed a waiver of the attorney-client privilege. And if there's a waiver, it means that it's no longer protected by the privilege. And a court, for example, could compel you to disclose that information. So the takeaway here is to really think about the environment and understand the setting of which you're having those communications when you do it remotely. When you meet person to person, you have control because you're in the same room, you know who is around you, but remotely you don't know. If the person is in a shared living situation, who's listening in. So you need to think about who's present, who can overhear the conversation, can they be trusted? I think of it this way. I mean, if you were having a meeting at your office, you would not invite in a neighbor, you would not invite a friend, you would not invite a stranger into that conversation with the client. So you need to be thinking about that when you're communicating with clients remotely as well. If I could go to the next slide, Sarah. I mean, similarly, this is a separate concept, but there's a duty of a lawyer to maintain the confidence of a client, and that's really an ethical obligation. And I'm sure in most of the countries, if not all of the countries that we practice in, there are rules of professional conduct that require us to maintain that confidentiality. And on this slide, I have some examples of the Philippine Code of Professional Responsibility that discusses that obligation. But just as you are obligated to protect the privileged communication, you're obligated to maintain the confidence of a client, whether that's a privileged communication or not. We can go to the next slide, please. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, 7's great. So where are some of these kind of challenges and pitfalls really come up? And I want to touch on a few things really quickly, and then we can talk about some of the document issues that I see are in the questions as well. Communicating and meeting with clients in the video conference context, phone, texting, and social media. Those are areas you need to think about how to best maintain confidence, how to maintain the privilege. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of document issues. So if we can go to the next slide. So in terms of the things that we talk about in the guide and some best practices, and there's a lot more detail obviously in the guide, but some things I just wanted to go over are some of the best ways to protect the confidentiality of information and protect that, to protect the privilege. Again, I've talked about in the video conferencing context, really think about the location of where if you're talking to a client either on the phone or in a Zoom call like this, make sure you understand the location. Try to avoid you or your client or the person you're giving advice to being in a open or public setting. Public Wi-Fi that you get for free, for example, in a cafe or a restaurant, usually is not a protected system. It's not an encrypted system. So using someone else's Wi-Fi network, especially in a cafe or a restaurant, that can open the communications up to being hacked or someone seeing those communications. So it's better if you use Wi-Fi systems that you know are secure and safe. For example, if you have one at your office, that's better than using one in a cafe. And think before you record a video conference. Recording that will be saved in a third party's, like Zoom's or someone else's database. So if you don't need to record a video conference, it's probably better not to. Email communication and texting and SMS messaging is also, an area you need to be thinking about. The good news is that most of the email services and text messaging services are now what is called encrypted. If it's encrypted, think of encryption as being like a password. If I send you a text or send you an email through an encrypted service, it means that our computers or our phones have basically like a secret code that talks to each other, so that only I will see your message to me and only you will see the message, my message to you. That's for most of the platforms that you're probably operating on, whether it be your email service or some of the texting services like WhatsApp or Line or Signal. They are all encrypted now, but it's important to understand that they are, because that's a way to protect the confidentiality of the information you're sending back and forth. And with respect to email communications, if you have the ability to, it's always good to have an antivirus software on your work computer, on your home computer, so that you can prevent people from getting into that system and accessing your information, or even taking that information and like removing it from your computer or something, which would be, removing client information would be a problem. So we discuss a lot of these things in the guide. It's important just to be aware of these. Again, most services have this, but you want to make sure they do as you're deciding what types of technology to use. We can go to the next slide, Sarah. In terms of, I'm just going to talk about a couple other things. In terms of documents, when sending documents back and forth, and I know there's been a couple questions I see in the chat box and the Q&A about how to protect documents being sent. I mean, the best way is when you're sending a document, for example, in an email, if it's a PDF document, is to password protect it, which basically just means if I send you a document, I will create a password and I will give you the password. And once you have the password, you can open the document, but no one else who would be able to view that PDF would be able to open it. And it's a very simple and easy thing to do. Most of the platforms offer password protection, and we discussed that in the guide as well. The key thing I just wanted, the takeaway from this though, I just want to mention that's very important is if you send a password protected document, you should send the password for the document in a separate communication. So you would send it a second email that gives the password, or a text or a phone call, because if you send the document and the password together, then it's open to anyone. I'm going to just move on to a couple other things so we can open up to Q&A. I just want to make a special note about using social media, because everyone uses social media now. All of us probably do. The thing that's just important to always remember if you're using it in your business as a legal service provider or in communicating with particular clients is social media platforms are generally very public. And so you need to be careful not to communicate confidential and privileged information with a client or someone you're providing legal services to through social media. Now, I don't want to scare you into thinking you shouldn't use social media at all, because it's a very important platform to put your name out there to get clients and to promote the legal services you provide. So it's absolutely appropriate and okay to have, you know, have to use social media to communicate and promote what you're doing. But when you're actually having the communications with the client, if someone, for example, reaches out to you through your social media platform, even if it's a separate message, you should take that to a different type of communication and not do that through so much through social media, because that is a more public forum, and you do not want to waive the attorney-client privilege by using too much social media. So you do something through secure email or a telephone or encrypted text messages. And then the final point I was going to make, and this doesn't relate so much to privilege or confidentiality, but it's just it's an important thing and an easy tool to use if you're working remotely, is that more and more services now offer ways to sign and execute documents online. So where historically we would get our client to sign a document, you know, in person, you can now have them do that through special services online. And these services, and I have an example here where you can see one that I did, an actual document I signed. It shows my signature. It shows the date the document was sent to me, the date that I looked at it, the date that I signed it. And it certifies that I opened the document and it knows my computer and that I signed it. The reason that's important, or can be important, is that many courts and administrative agencies will accept these documents as if they were signed in person. So they might not accept a PDF document that was just signed and sent back, because there's no independent verification that it's a true and accurate document. But if you do it through one of these services, Adobe, DocuSign are examples, then these documents can be used officially as legal documents. And that's a very important tool that we use all the time now that we're working remotely. Those are just some of the things that you know, we hope you would think about as you continue to expand the work you do remotely. You know, privilege and confidentiality obviously are the core of what we do with our clients and those we provide services for. And again, the good news is that more and more of this it's getting easier and easier to do things in a way that is very seamless. These programs are easy to find, easy to use, and many of them can be free to nonprofits or very inexpensive. So the guide kind of organizes and describes a lot of this information, as Sarah said earlier, and we hope that you'll find it as a good resource, a great resource, you know, going forward.
Thank you, Andrew. So go to the guide, download the guide, and check what particular issues you are focusing on in particular, whether it's confidentiality or conducting online discussions or receiving documents. The guide will provide helpful information. So we have time to go back to some of the questions. But before that, we have a few questions for you, for our attendees. Can we launch the next set of questions for the poll? Okay.
Great. So yeah, we have 3 more questions just to hear from you. The first one is, what type or types of online remote services are you currently using? And you can choose more than one for this answer. So teleconferencing, video conferencing, webinars, hotlines, texting. The second question is, what video communication platforms do you use most, including like the one we're using today, Zoom, but there's several other platforms. I'd be interested to see what other platforms people are using. And then what are the biggest challenges that you have faced in working remotely? So why don't we take, again, just 3 questions, maybe 1 minute. We'll post those answers and we'll take a look at those and then continue with the question Q&A session. All right, why don't we post the results? Well, good. I mean, this is, it looks very interesting. In terms of the first question, it looks like all of the all of the types of remote legal of providing remote legal services that we listed are being used fairly heavily. Obviously, video conferencing being the most. That's not surprising, but I love seeing that there are, you know, lots of webinars and hotlines and things like that going on as well. I mean, that's another area that's addressed in the guide, but a great way to reach a broad audience is to do webinars and provide hotlines. So it's great to see those answers. In terms of the video communication platforms you use most, so looks like Zoom has, and again, that's not a surprising response, but that seems to be the most used. That's in my practice, certainly the most that's used as well. I see Microsoft Teams being used more and more as well as, and Google Meet as well. Biggest challenges to working remotely. I mean, we hear this a lot, that the unreliable internet is really, you know, the primary issue, and that's a huge issue. And I'll let others who deal with it more directly, you know, maybe address that in terms of how to deal with it. But because many of the things we're talking about in terms of providing remote services rely on the internet and bandwidth, that's a very, you know, that's a tough issue. And I think maybe thinking about the time of day you try to communicate, you know, and some of those things are things that could be discussed. But thank you. These are interesting and helpful responses.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very interesting that we're talking about online programming, and the biggest challenge is internet connection.
Yes.
so we go back to Annette and Yevgen. I have 2 questions that are about the clients, or those who are seeking justice, those who are asking for advice. One question is asking Annette and Yevgen, if you have encountered questions or requests from groups, not individuals, but groups, or a person representing a particular group or community. So that's one question. And then the second question, and maybe Andrew, Sarah can also address the question, is how do you build trust in online communication, whether an individual client or a group asking for legal advice, legal representation? How do you build trust, which is more easily achieved in-person communication, if you do it online? So maybe you can address the first question first, on whether your programs, Annette and Yevgen, had supported, provide assistance to groups or communities, not just individuals.
I have just answered this question in the Q&A.
The chat box,
box.
in the Q&A. Okay, okay.
But I can repeat it. So
yes,
unfortunately,
for the benefit of the other attendees.
Unfortunately, our service live chat consultations is focused on the needs of individual clients, but in terms of seeking of new funding source for support of this service, we're looking and developing now the service for local authorities for providing this service for some fee. So we are considering the possibility of consulting the groups of people, but focusing on the servicemen of local authorities.
Thank you. How about Annette? Any group requests?
Yes, we do receive group requests through representatives of particular communities that have legal issues. We still need to verify that that particular representative is speaking on behalf of the group, because sometimes you may find that they may actually be misrepresenting the facts. So we would ordinarily do a lot of follow-up, and if possible, then move from the platform and really have an in-person conversation. In terms of building trust, a lot of the questions actually that the lawyers respond to have a lot of follow-up questions. So in fact, you find that through follow-up questions, then the client and our in-house advocates are able to kind of build trust, because it's not just at the response of one question, but then there are many other questions that would arise from that initial question. And I think this is one of the ways in which trust has been built. And then also because clients would then use the platform after having engaged with the Kituo in another forum. So maybe they heard about the organization in a media event or a community event. And so already that trust would have been built by the time they do send out the question. So the need, this building that trust will not really be a problem, because the previous engagement.
Okay. Andrew, Sarah, would you like to add to that? On building the trust of a new client.
Yeah, no, I would underscore this issue of being responsive. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult to build trust when you're not sitting across from somebody face to face. It's setting expectations at the outset, and meeting the client where they are too, in terms of their ability to connect. So making sure that you're being sensitive to whether they are able to do a video chat or prefer to do a video chat. Some people either don't have access to the technology to do that, or would prefer to do it in another way. So making sure that you meet them where they are in terms of what their preferences are and what is available to them technologically.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know it's not always possible. I think if you can set up a video chat or a FaceTime, just it's the next best thing to being in person. That's a nice way to connect. But of course, I know many of the people who are in our audience, their clients don't have the ability to do that. So I think the thing that have been discussed about being responsive, being in a calm setting, just trying not to have a lot of ambient noise, it's the same things we would do if we were in person, really listen to the person. And I think it's important when you're speaking on the phone, for example, to maybe repeat what the person told you, so that they know that you've heard it. And if you were in person, you might be nodding your head and they'd understand that you're getting it. But if you maybe just repeat something that they told you, that instills trust because they know that you're listening and that you're in, you know, you're keeping good notes and that you understand and what they're saying.
Thank you. And that also responded to some questions raised by some of our attendees about the technological divide, about the non-availability of internet or the intermittent internet connectivity that especially in rural areas and especially in countries in developing countries. And I think Sarah and Andrew addressed that well by saying we cannot impose on the our partner communities or partner individuals or those who we expect to reach us that they have the same internet connectivity, they have the same access to equipment that we have. So it's important to check the situation. It's important to address that issue of access to the internet, that issue of access to technology. Again, going back to the guide, we have a number of options presented in the guide in terms of the platforms, what can be used for online, for calls, what can be used for meetings, what can be used for sending documents. We have many more questions, but unfortunately, we do not have time, and we can continue the conversation in the discussion forum in the network website, and my colleagues, we will be posting on the chat box the link to the site. But just before we end, I just want to ask Yevgen, Annette, Andrew, Sarah, some final words, recommendations. What would you recommend? Especially based on your experience with online remote programs. Who wants to start?
I'll start briefly. I mean, I just would say that, you know, don't be afraid of technology. I mean, whether it's a Zoom meeting, which seems, you know, like a little more complicated, or using a phone or texting, it is a very good way, efficient way to communicate with our clients, and really necessary, certainly during the pandemic, but I think will become more and more necessary and used in the future. And again, I think the good news is once you learn it, it's actually, the companies are making it easy and accessible. So try to embrace the idea that we can serve our clients better by embracing these avenues to communicate with them.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah,
I think on
Annette.
Oh, sorry.
Annette,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I think on my part, I would say that there need to expressions or service providers who can support such kind of innovations. I think from us, we learned a lot from other agencies that had most technical, skill around innovation and technology, and this really helped us a lot. And then also just being sensitive to the needs of the communities that we serve, so that the innovation is not too abstract and it actually responds to the particular group that we serve. And I think this is how use of such platforms becomes easier when we design such innovations with our community and beneficiaries in mind. Yeah, that's it for me.
Yevgen? Thank you, Annette.
Well, my recommendations are, first of all, to build partnerships, because distance tools and the issue of support of these tools sometimes is very difficult for one organization. I recommend to think about technical issues before launching these services, because it's an issue of trust, issues of quality of these services. Finally, some attendees put their questions on that not all people who need legal advice have electronic devices with access to the internet. So my recommendation is to think or maybe consider providing legal aid by phone. For instance, our organization now have an idea to develop a hotline, very similar service to live chat box, but with the help of cloud-based phone service.
Thank you. Thank you, Yevgen. Sarah?
Yeah, no, just finally, yeah, just also want to underscore, like Yevgen and Annette mentioned, the issue of paying careful attention to the needs and the desires of the population that you work with, and modifying your approach to meet them where they are. And then also, as you mentioned, we're almost a year into this pandemic, but it's hard to believe, but it's not going to last forever, we hope. And to be sort of thinking strategically about the changes that you've made. We've all just been running frantically to try to keep pace with all of these changes, but to really kind of take stock of the changes that your organization has made, what has been successful and what is not, and what you hope to carry forward in the non-pandemic environment, which will come.
Thank you, Sarah. We have many more. Questions, and we invite you to visit our discussion forum. And just check the link in the chat box. There are questions specific to Annette, for Annette and for Yevgen, and we will request Annette and Yevgen to respond to those questions through the discussion forum. Some of the questions were raising the issue of language. Some are asking, can we have French interpretation next webinar? Can we have Hindi? And we would like to thank our interpreters, Maggie and Marta. We don't see them, but they have provided excellent service for us in this webinar, and that is part of the online program that we have now, addressing the issue of language. So again, please check the guide, and please wait for further announcements on when the Spanish version will be available. On behalf of the Legal Namati, the Legal Empowerment Network, the Open Society Justice Initiative, DLA Piper, New Perimeter, Kituo Cha Sharia, Legal Development Network, Ecolex from Ecuador. Thank you very much, Andrew, Annette, Sarah, Yevgen. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, my colleagues who are helping us with the tech side, of the webinar. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. Again, we will share the recording and some highlights. So please visit our site. Please visit the network site. And stay safe and healthy. We have survived 1 year, and we are continuing our programs despite the pandemic. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Marlon.
Thank you.
Webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.